Officer Brandon Hayes had accumulated 22 months of service with the Phoenix Police Department, yet his disciplinary record already bore witness to a troubling trend that went unaddressed. He had generated 9 official complaints within a span of less than 2 years. Each and every one of these incidents involved women of color who were questioned in areas where Hayes apparently believed they did not belong. One sweltering afternoon in Scottsdale, this pattern of behavior would ultimately cost the city $6,700,000 and bring his career to a spectacular end. The woman in the vehicle was Special Agent Nicole Foster, a seasoned professional with 14 years of experience in the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. She resided in the upscale apartment complex directly in front of which Hayes had parked. She had just returned from a workout at the gym. She was sitting in her legally parked Mercedes, perusing her phone before heading inside. However, Officer Hayes, upon observing a black woman in an expensive vehicle within an affluent neighborhood, determined that something must be amiss. Before we proceed, where are you viewing this from? If this is your initial visit, please consider subscribing. Narratives such as these warrant dissemination, and your support aids us in bringing more truths to light. Scottsdale, Arizona, a municipality renowned for its high-end retail establishments, golf resorts, and some of the most valuable real estate in the Southwest. It's the kind of locale where BMWs and Mercedes frequently line the streets, and apartment buildings boast valet services and rooftop pools. It was 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon in September. The ambient temperature registered 104 degrees Fahrenheit, the sort of heat that causes asphalt to ripple and air conditioning to become an absolute necessity. Special Agent Nicole Foster had dedicated 14 years to the ATF. For 14 years, she had been involved in investigating firearms trafficking, gang-related violence, and explosives cases across the Southwest region. She had participated in undercover operations that dismantled illegal gun rings, intercepting weapons transported from Arizona into Mexico. She had collaborated with Mexican federal police on investigations into cross-border trafficking. She had provided testimony in federal court on 31 separate occasions. Her professional endeavors had culminated in over 200 criminal convictions. Her success rate in case closures was among the highest within the Phoenix Field Division. That afternoon, she had concluded her exercise routine at the gym, located 3 blocks from her residence. She was dressed in athletic attire, comprising black leggings, a gray tank top, and her hair secured in a ponytail. She had driven back to her apartment building in her silver Mercedes E-Class, a vehicle she had diligently saved for 3 years to purchase. She had parked in her designated space within the resident parking area. She was seated inside, the air conditioning running, scrolling through work-related emails on her personal mobile device before proceeding upstairs to shower. There was nothing illicit, nothing suspicious, merely a federal agent concluding her daily routine. Nicole was 38 years of age. She had grown up in South Phoenix, the daughter of a single mother who worked 2 jobs to ensure they had shelter and sustenance. She had financed her education at Arizona State University by working evening shifts at a call center. She had graduated with distinction, earning a degree in criminal justice. She had applied to the ATF immediately after college and been accepted following a stringent background check and psychological assessment. She had completed 6 months of training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Georgia. She had demonstrated exceptional proficiency in firearms training, tactical operations, and investigative procedures. Her career had been forged through competence and unwavering determination. She had earned every promotion, every commendation, every assignment. She had outright purchased her apartment after years of dedicated saving. She drove a vehicle for which she had paid in cash. She had constructed a life that brought immense pride to her mother, a life that served as a testament to the possibility of escaping poverty through education and dedicated service. However, to Officer Brandon Hayes, none of these accomplishments held any significance. All he perceived was a black woman who, in his estimation, could not possibly belong in that particular neighborhood. Officer Brandon Hayes had been a member of the Phoenix Police Force for 22 months. His performance at the academy had been mediocre at best. He had encountered difficulties during de-escalation training. His instructors had noted a predisposition to interpret situations as confrontational, even when such confrontations were not inherently present. He had barely passed his psychological evaluation. The examining psychologist had raised concerns regarding issues of authority and potential racial bias, but had nonetheless recommended that he be granted an opportunity under close supervision. This promised close supervision never materialized. Hayes was assigned to a patrol district in North Phoenix and Scottsdale, an area recognized as one of the most affluent sectors of the city. His training officer provided his endorsement after the minimum required probationary period, remarking that Hayes exhibited enthusiasm but would benefit from ongoing mentorship. The anticipated mentorship never occurred. Hayes was subsequently released to solo patrol, and the commencement of complaints began almost immediately. The inaugural complaint surfaced 3 months into his independent patrol duties. Hayes had stopped a Hispanic woman who was loading groceries into her Lexus SUV outside of a Whole Foods market. He had demanded proof of ownership for the vehicle. She possessed the vehicle's registration and indeed owned it. She subsequently lodged a complaint. Internal Affairs initiated a review of the matter. Hayes asserted that the vehicle matched the description in a stolen car report. This was demonstrably untrue. The complaint was resolved with a directive for counseling. The second complaint originated from an Asian woman who was jogging through a gated residential community. Hayes had stopped her, questioning her presence and requesting to see her identification. She was a resident of that community. She was a practicing cardiologist. She filed a complaint. The Internal Affairs Division conducted a review. Hayes claimed she appeared disoriented. This complaint was closed with the imposition of additional training requirements. The pattern persisted. A black woman was observed waiting in her car outside a private educational institution. Hayes accused her of conducting surveillance. She was merely there to collect her nephew. Another complaint arose from an Indian woman who was seated on a bench within a shopping plaza. Hayes questioned her reason for being there. She was waiting for her husband. Another complaint involved a Middle Eastern woman who was photographing architectural features in the downtown area. Hayes detained her, citing suspicious activity. She was a professional photographer engaged in an assignment. This accounted for another complaint. A total of 9 complaints over a period of 22 months. 9 incidents involving women of color. 9 instances where Hayes had presumed criminal intent based solely on their ethnicity and the surrounding environment. On each of these 9 occasions, Internal Affairs concluded the cases with admonishments, counseling sessions, or mandatory training, but without any substantial repercussions. Hayes remained on patrol. His supervisors were cognizant of this recurring pattern. They discussed it internally, but they elected not to remove him from active duty. They did not mandate intensive remedial training. They did not place him on modified duty pending a renewed psychological evaluation. They simply continued to close complaints, operating under the assumption that he would eventually improve. He did not. That particular Thursday afternoon, Hayes was navigating through Scottsdale on a routine patrol. He had previously responded to a minor vehicular collision. He had issued 2 citations for speeding. Currently, he was cruising through an upscale apartment complex, actively searching for parking infractions or any signs of suspicious behavior. He drove past the resident parking area and observed Nicole Foster seated in her Mercedes, a black woman occupying a luxury vehicle within a building where the monthly rental rates commenced at $3,000. Hayes' perception did not register a resident engaged with her phone. Instead, it processed a potential vehicle theft suspect, someone utilizing a stolen vehicle, an individual who, in his view, warranted investigation. He maneuvered into the lot and parked his patrol car directly behind Nicole's Mercedes, effectively blocking her egress. Do you believe that law enforcement officers engage in profiling based on assumptions about who can afford to reside in affluent areas? Please share your perspective in the comments section below. Nicole detected the presence of the patrol vehicle in her rearview mirror. She watched as Hayes disembarked and approached her driver's side window. Her extensive tenure as a federal agent had instilled in her the ability to recognize when a situation was about to escalate negatively. She placed her phone down. She kept her hands clearly visible on the steering wheel. She waited. Hayes approached and rapped on her window with his knuckles. Nicole depressed the button to lower it by approximately half its height. "Excuse me," she stated calmly. "I am parked legally. Is there a problem?" Hayes leaned down slightly, his sunglasses reflecting her image. "This is resident parking only. You do not reside here." Nicole maintained a neutral tone of voice. "Actually, I do. My building is located right there." She gestured towards the entrance, which was approximately 20 yards away. Hayes surveyed the building, then turned his attention back to her. "I find that difficult to believe. Kindly present your identification and vehicle registration." "May I inquire as to the reason for this inquiry?" "I am parked in my assigned spot. My apartment number is 4-12. Identification and registration, please." At this juncture, Nicole felt the familiar weight of the situation settling upon her. The inherent presumption of wrongdoing, the immediate disbelief, the steadfast refusal to accept her assertion. She had encountered this sentiment countless times throughout her life, but never from a police officer in the parking lot of her own residence. "Officer," she stated deliberately, "I am a federal agent with the ATF, and yes, I reside here." Hayes's expression remained impassive. "Indeed you do. Please exit the vehicle." And there it was. The critical juncture where ingrained bias superseded factual evidence. The precise moment when the credentials of a black woman held no value because they did not align with Officer Hayes's preconceived notion of who was entitled to reside in luxury apartments. Nicole made a decisive choice. She retrieved her mobile phone and initiated a video recording. "I am documenting this interaction. You have ordered me to exit my vehicle without any justifiable cause. I am a federal agent legally parked within my own apartment complex." Put the phone down and exit the vehicle. "No, I possess the right to record this, and I will not exit without you clearly articulating your reasonable suspicion." Hayes's countenance flushed, and his hand moved towards his duty belt. "I have instructed you to exit." Nicole held her phone steady, aiming it at Hayes through the window. "Officer Hayes, your badge number is clearly visible on your uniform. The date is September 21st, and the time is 3:32 p.m. You are detaining a federal ATF agent at her residence without legal justification." A woman walking towards her vehicle in the vicinity paused her movement and observed the unfolding scene. She too was recording the incident. She recognized Nicole from various building events. They had conversed at the pool just the previous weekend. "Officer," the woman called out, "that's Nicole. She lives here. What is happening?" Hayes turned towards her. "Ma'am, this matter does not concern you. Please continue on your way." "It does concern me. You are harassing my neighbor. I am conducting an investigation into what?" "She is sitting in her car in her own designated parking space." Hayes turned back to Nicole, evident frustration now etched on his face. "This is your final opportunity. Exit the vehicle or I will forcibly remove you." Nicole's training immediately took effect. She understood the protocols for de-escalation, the importance of thorough documentation, and the necessity of legally protecting herself. "Officer Hayes, I am going to reach for my credentials. They are located in my gym bag on the passenger seat. I am informing you of my actions before I undertake them. Keep your hands where I can see them. They are precisely where you can observe them." Nicole reached slowly across to the passenger seat and retrieved her gym bag. She unzipped it and extracted her ATF credentials. She held them up to the window. "Special Agent Nicole Foster, ATF Phoenix Field Division. My badge number is clearly displayed here. I have been with the Bureau for 14 years. This vehicle is registered to me. This is my apartment building, where I have resided for 3 years, and you have stopped me without any legal basis whatsoever." Hayes offered a perfunctory glance at the credentials. Those could be counterfeit. The neighbor, who was still recording, interjected once more. "Officer, those are genuine. Nicole is a federal agent. Everyone in this building knows her. You need to contact your supervisor." Hayes disregarded her statement. He grasped the handle of Nicole's car door. "Exit now." Nicole maintained a steady voice, despite the growing anger within her. "If you open that door, you will be assaulting a federal officer. I am not resisting. I am not attempting to flee. I am simply refusing an unlawful directive. Hayes yanked the door open. Should law enforcement officers face criminal charges for refusing to verify federal credentials? Please let me know your thoughts. This was the precise moment when the situation rapidly escalated beyond Hayes' control. The instant he opened that door, he transitioned from unlawful detention to the commission of assault upon a federal officer. Nicole's neighbor had already contacted 911. Building security was en route, and Nicole's phone was capturing every second of the event. Nicole remained seated, her credentials still held aloft. "You have just assaulted a federal officer on camera. I sincerely hope your career was worth it." Hayes reached for her arm. "Get out of the vehicle." Nicole pulled her arm away. "Do not touch me. I'm contacting my supervisor immediately." She switched to her phone's application and initiated a call. It rang twice before Special Agent in Charge Thomas Rodriguez answered. "Rodriguez." "Tom, it's Foster. I am being detained by a Phoenix PD officer in my apartment parking lot. He is refusing to verify my credentials and has just opened my car door. I require immediate assistance." Rodriguez's voice immediately adopted a more urgent tone. "Where are you located?" "Scottsdale address. The specific address of my building. I am recording the interaction." "Do not move. Do not engage further. I am dispatching 2 agents and immediately notifying Phoenix Command." Hayes overheard the entirety of the conversation. His face had transitioned from flushed to a pale hue. His initial confidence began to erode as the gravity of the situation became apparent. A security guard from the building arrived on the scene. "What is the issue here, officer?" Hayes turned to him. "I am investigating a suspicious vehicle." The guard looked at Nicole and offered a smile. "Agent Foster, you are investigating Agent Foster. She resides here. She serves on the board of our Residents Association." Hayes remained silent. His radio crackled to life. A supervisor was being dispatched. Multiple police units were converging on the scene. Federal agents were confirmed to be in transit. The situation he had precipitated through his own bias was now escalating into a departmental crisis. 2 additional residents had paused their activities to witness the unfolding events. Both were recording the incident. Both recognized Nicole. One was a retired captain from the Phoenix Police Department who resided on the 6th floor. The retired captain approached. "Officer, I am Captain Davis, retired Phoenix PD. I know Agent Foster personally. She has lived here for many years. You need to terminate this interaction immediately and offer an apology." Hayes finally managed to speak. "I have reasonable suspicion." "You have bias," Captain Davis stated, cutting him off. "Not suspicion, bias, and it is currently being documented by 6 individuals." Nicole remained seated in her vehicle, the engine still running, the air conditioning still operational, her phone still recording. Her supervisor had instructed her not to move, so she complied. She simply sat there, documenting Officer Hayes systematically dismantling his own career in real time. 3 Phoenix PD vehicles arrived within a matter of minutes. The first officer to disembark was Sergeant Maria Santos, a veteran with 19 years of service who had meticulously built her reputation on fostering community relations and ensuring accountability. She surveyed the scene and immediately grasped the entirety of what had transpired. She had reviewed Hayes' complaint file just 2 weeks prior and had strongly recommended his placement on administrative duty pending retraining. Her recommendation had unfortunately been disregarded. "Hayes!" Santos called out sharply. "Step away from the vehicle." "Sarge, I stopped a suspicious vehicle. That is Agent Foster, ATF. She resides here and you have just created a federal incident." Santos approached Nicole's car. "Agent Foster, I am Sergeant Santos. I sincerely apologize for this unfortunate situation. May I please see your credentials?" Nicole handed them through the window. Santos examined them with meticulous care. She then surveyed the apartment building, the clearly marked assigned parking sign, and the registration sticker on Nicole's windshield, which corresponded with the apartment complex records. She turned back to Hayes, her voice laced with a chilling, controlled fury. "You stopped a federal agent in her own parking lot. She looked suspicious. She looked black, Santos interrupted. That is what you are implying, and you have engaged in this behavior 9 times previously. 9 complaints within 22 months, all involving women of color, all occurring in circumstances where you presumed they were out of place. Hayes began to respond, but Santos raised her hand. Do not. Simply do not. Surrender your badge and service weapon. 2 ATF vehicles pulled into the parking lot. Special Agent in Charge Rodriguez exited his vehicle, accompanied by another agent. He proceeded directly to Nicole's car. Foster, are you all right? Physically, yes. Professionally, I am furious. Rodriguez nodded. We will handle this. He then turned to Sergeant Santos. I am S.A.C. Rodriguez, ATF Phoenix. Agent Foster is one of my most accomplished agents. She has been instrumental in cases that have saved lives, and your officer has just committed assault against her on camera in the presence of multiple witnesses. Santos's expression conveyed her complete accord with his assessment. He is being removed from duty effective immediately. Phoenix PD will be submitting a comprehensive report and will fully cooperate with any federal investigation. We will be filing charges, Rodriguez stated in a low tone. This is not merely a questionable stop. This constitutes assault on a federal officer. The small assembly of residents observed as Hayes relinquished his badge and weapon. His hands were visibly trembling. His face had turned a ghastly gray. The full weight of his actions was finally crashing down upon him. Building security had secured the parking lot camera footage. The retired captain was providing a formal witness statement. Nicole's neighbor was transmitting her video recording to Sergeant Santos. The accumulated evidence was overwhelming and undeniably damning. Nicole finally exited her vehicle, her phone still in hand, her credentials still prominently displayed. She looked directly at Hayes. Officer Hayes, my work is dedicated to ensuring the safety of this city. I investigate individuals involved in firearms trafficking who arm criminal gangs and cartels. I have risked my life for this community, and you have treated me like a common criminal in my own home simply because you could not conceive of a black woman residing here. Hayes stared at the ground, utterly devoid of a response, an excuse, or any form of defense. Nicole then turned to Agent Rodriguez. I demand a thorough investigation, federal charges, and I require an explanation as to how an officer with 9 prior complaints was permitted to continue patrolling. You shall have all of it, Rodriguez assured her. Why do certain officers perceive successful black women as improbable rather than accomplished? Please share your commentary. By 6:00 p.m., the details of the incident had begun to circulate rapidly through law enforcement communication channels. By 9:00 p.m., it had been reported by local news outlets. By midnight, the story had achieved national recognition. Headlines blared, ATF agent detained in her own apartment parking lot. Phoenix cop assaults federal agent for sitting in her car while black. Video footage captures officer refusing credentials, forcing car, door open. Federal charges anticipated in assault on ATF agent. The headlines effectively encapsulated the sheer absurdity and the palpable outrage of the situation. A decorated federal agent with 14 years of distinguished service was subjected to treatment akin to that of a criminal by an officer who had amassed 9 prior complaints in less than 2 years, facing no substantive repercussions until he committed an assault on an individual with federal protection. The ATF issued a formal statement within hours. Special Agent Nicole Foster is an exemplary agent who has devoted her career to public safety. The conduct exhibited by Officer Hayes was unacceptable and criminal in nature. We are actively coordinating with the Phoenix Police Department and will vigorously pursue federal charges for assault on a federal officer. The Phoenix Police Department released their statement shortly thereafter. We are fully aware of today's incident involving one of our officers and an ATF agent. Officer Hayes has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. We are treating this matter with the utmost seriousness and will cooperate fully with federal authorities. The mayor of Phoenix personally contacted ATF leadership to extend an apology. The police chief visited Nicole's field office the following day to offer a formal, in-person apology. However, apologies, while acknowledged, do not negate the gravity of violations. They cannot erase the moment when a federal agent was compelled to assert her fundamental right to exist within her own home. Civil rights attorneys contacted Nicole within 24 hours. The case presented extraordinary circumstances. A federal agent possessing an impeccable professional record, an officer with a documented pattern of 9 prior complaints exhibiting clear bias, and an assault captured on camera from multiple vantage points. Witnesses included a retired police captain, and body camera footage provided irrefutable evidence of the entire incident. This was not merely a winnable case, it held the potential to become a landmark civil rights victory. The subsequent lawsuit named Officer Brandon Hayes, the supervisors who had demonstrably ignored his pattern of complaints, and the Phoenix Police Department. The claims presented were extensive and profoundly damaging. Unlawful detention without reasonable suspicion, racial profiling and discrimination, assault and battery, violation of federal civil rights, false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress, failure to adequately train, supervise, and discipline officers with documented bias complaints, and a deliberate indifference to a pervasive pattern of discrimination. Scottsdale's city attorneys meticulously reviewed all available evidence. The visual evidence, the footage from the body cameras, the 9 previous grievances, Brandon Hayes' insufficient preparation, the advisories from Sergeant Santos that had been disregarded, the statement from the retired captain, Nicole's unblemished 14-year service history. The conclusion was swift and undeniable. This situation was indefensible. Not before a jury, not in federal court, not with this body of proof. Phoenix reached a settlement 14 months later. The sum was awarded to Special Agent Nicole Foster, the largest resolution in Arizona's history concerning racial discrimination by law enforcement. The funds originated from taxpayers, the very public Nicole had dedicated 14 years to safeguarding, yet who had failed to protect her from an officer whose prejudice had been documented 9 times before he targeted a federal agent. Officer Brandon Hayes was dismissed 9 weeks after the encounter. His termination notice was thorough and final. Officer Hayes exhibited a consistent pattern of racial profiling evidenced by 9 complaints over 22 months. His apprehension and physical contact with Special Agent Foster lacked legal justification and were driven by racial prejudice. His refusal to acknowledge valid federal credentials indicated a deliberate disregard for proper protocol. His application of physical force against a federal agent constituted assault and criminal behavior. His employment is terminated immediately. He is permanently prohibited from future employment with the Phoenix Police Department or any associated entity. Hayes' name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His law enforcement career concluded at the age of 24. He would never again wear a badge, not in Arizona nor in any other state. The union declined to represent him after reviewing the visual evidence. Federal prosecutors indicted him for assaulting a federal officer. He entered a guilty plea to prevent a trial. He received 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a permanent criminal record. Hayes issued a declaration through his legal counsel. I committed serious errors in judgment that resulted in harm to Special Agent Foster. I allowed prejudice to supersede my training, and I failed to conduct myself with the professionalism expected of law enforcement. I accept complete accountability and extend my apologies to Agent Foster, the ATF, and the community. The apology held no weight. The damage was irreversible. The 3 supervisors who had ignored directives to remove Hayes from patrol duty faced disciplinary action. 1 was demoted and 2 were reassigned. None were dismissed despite their complicity in allowing Hayes' pattern to persist until it encompassed a federal agent. The Phoenix Police Department endured unprecedented scrutiny. How had Hayes managed to remain employed despite 9 complaints? Why had Sergeant Santos' recommendation not been heeded? What training was in place to address officers with documented biases? Who was reviewing patterns of complaints before they escalated to assaults? The Department of Justice initiated a comprehensive inquiry into the Phoenix Police Department's handling of discrimination complaints. Federal monitors were appointed for a period of 3 years. Extensive reforms were mandated and closely observed. Automatic reassignment to desk duty following 2 substantiated complaints of bias. Mandatory psychological reevaluation after 3 complaints. Dismissal after 4 substantiated complaints with no recourse for appeal. Real-time tracking of all stops, including demographic analysis. Quarterly public reports detailing complaint patterns. An independent civilian review board empowered with termination authority. Supervisors held responsible for disregarding advisories concerning problematic officers. Special Agent Nicole Foster provided testimony before the Phoenix City Council. Her statement was composed, impactful, and damning. I've spent 14 years investigating criminal activity. I've testified in federal court on numerous occasions. I've faced gunfire, threats. I've participated in undercover operations where my survival depended on my training and judgment, and none of that seemed to matter to Officer Hayes. All he perceived was a black woman in a location he deemed I should not inhabit. This was not based on facts, but on prejudice, on the assumption that individuals resembling me do not drive Mercedes or reside in affluent residences. That prejudice placed me in peril within my own home. And had I not been a federal agent with access to resources and institutional support, I would likely be just another complaint that was closed with a reprimand. She paused, her voice lowering but gaining intensity. 9 women preceded me. 9 women who lodged complaints against Officer Hayes. 9 instances where your department had the opportunity to remove him before he escalated to assault. 9 times they opted to shield him rather than protect the community, and it required him assaulting a federal agent before anyone treated it with seriousness. Consider the implications of that. Consider the message it conveys. The council chamber fell silent. Several members displayed visible signs of emotion. The police chief looked downwards. The city manager diligently took notes. Nicole allocated a substantial portion of her settlement to establish a foundation dedicated to supporting women of color in law enforcement. Her objective was to create mentorship programs, scholarship opportunities, and support networks. She envisioned the next generation having the backing she had lacked, to see themselves in leadership roles, to understand their inherent right to be there, irrespective of any doubt. The incident fundamentally altered her. She continued her work at the ATF, pursuing firearms trafficking investigations and serving her community, but she became more circumspect, more aware, and more sensitive to how she was perceived. The effortless confidence of navigating the world without anticipation of being subjected to profiling had vanished. Hayes had deprived her of that. She harbored resentment, but refused to let it impede her progress. Should officers with multiple complaints of bias be permanently barred from law enforcement? Share your thoughts in the comments section. This was not merely about an isolated improper stop. It illuminated what transpires when systems shield officers with documented prejudice until they target an individual sufficiently influential to contest the situation. Officer Brandon Hayes did not suddenly develop biased tendencies upon encountering Nicole Foster. He had been engaging in profiling women of color for nearly 2 years. 9 complaints, 9 distinct women, 9 scenarios where he inferred criminality based on race and environment, and on each occasion the system afforded him another chance. Further instruction, additional counseling, more admonitions, but no genuine repercussions, no removal from street duties, no mandatory psychological intervention, no acknowledgement that the persistent pattern signified something significant. Consequently, Hayes continued his patrols, continued his profiling, continued to infringe upon rights until he made the critical error of targeting a federal agent with 14 years of service and established institutional backing. The 9 women who came forward before Nicole lacked that backing. They filed complaints that were dismissed. They endured the violation and moved on, as the system assured them that Hayes' conduct was being addressed. However, it was not. It was merely being recorded and disregarded. That is how systemic bias operates. It protects officers until the price of that protection becomes unsupportable. Until an individual possessing resources and credentials compels accountability. until a lawsuit settlement threatens the financial reserves. Brandon Hayes' career is concluded. That represents justice. Phoenix disbursed $6,700,000. That signifies accountability. The supervisors who enabled him faced repercussions. That constitutes consequence. Yet, none of these actions reverse the violation. None of them restore Nicole's sense of security in her own residence. None of them reinstate the basic entitlement to sit in one's vehicle without needing to justify one's existence. The paramount question is, what transformations will occur henceforth? Will departments finally dismiss officers after 2 substantiated complaints rather than waiting for 9? Will they finally hold supervisors accountable when they disregard recommendations for dismissal? Will they finally accept that recognizing patterns serves as an early warning, not a bureaucratic annoyance? Because if we fail to rectify the system that granted Brandon Hayes 9 opportunities to change, if we do not confront the assumptions that led him to believe successful black women are an impossibility rather than a reality, then we are merely awaiting the next officer, the next victim, the next multi-million-dollar settlement that fails to alter the underlying culture that engendered the problem. Provide your opinion in the comments if you believe any officer with 3 substantiated bias complaints should be permanently decertified without exception, and if you feel stories of this nature warrant attention. If you concur that accountability necessitates visibility and reform commences with awareness, then please subscribe. As we are committed to exposing these patterns, we will continue to demand better. We will persist in advocating for communities where federal agents can be present in their vehicles without being subjected to assault, where women of color can exist in affluent neighborhoods without undue scrutiny, where an individual's qualifications and achievements hold more weight than their complexion. This is not solely about one officer or one agent. It pertains to all of us and the caliber of system we are willing to accept.